Welcome to the Arby Podcast. In today's episode, Laura McLand, VP of HR at Sun Holdings, shares her insights on the importance of people in the restaurant industry, the challenges of managing multiple brands, and innovative employee benefits that enhance retention. She emphasizes the need for nimbleness in HR practices and the role of technology in recruitment. Laura also reflects on her personal journey, including her first job at Arby's and how it shaped her understanding of the workforce. Enjoy.
This episode is brought to you by JoJo, an AI virtual recruiter powered by Sprockets. Designed for the hourly workforce, JoJo works 24/7 to source, screen, and schedule interviews with the best applicants for your business. JoJo helps reduce employee turnover and time spent hiring so you and your team can focus on other important tasks. To learn more, head to sprockets.ai/JoJo.
Hey, good.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
And so for those that are listening, Laura here, you're the VP of HR at Sun Holdings. It's a very large ownership group of quick service restaurants based in Dallas, Texas. We're so excited. We've been pursuing you for a while to be on the podcast, just given all the successes that you've had with the group and your people practices. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So talk to us a little bit maybe about how you got into talent and why you're passionate about people at the business.
I'm very passionate about people. That's kind of the nucleus of our business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have over 1,200 locations across 31 states. And, we do have a diverse group of restaurants, whether it's full service or quick service, and even some retail as well. But the most important piece of all of those is our people and how they treat our guests. So we have to treat our employees as they were our guests. And so we keep that in mind as we roll out different initiatives. We also get their feedback. We try to see what is the latest and greatest on what they're hearing about out in the workforce and how we can furnish that to them so that they can feel like, hey, they've been a part of this big family, but yet they're also really important as well individually.
Yeah, and I know a lot of our listeners are large and small operators in franchise systems. But a unique challenge that you have that I actually see happening more and more is going multi-brand. So it's easy at times to create systems and processes when every logo is the same outside of all of your locations. You're like, we represent this brand. This is how we're going to hire for each one of those with the job descriptions, the hiring motion, the retention strategies, et cetera, et cetera. For you have full service, you have quick service, you have retail. How do you go about kind of building different playbooks for those? Or do you say, hey, we're going to operate the same, agnostic to what type of business it is?
That's a great question. So we actually do it in a multifaceted approach. So we try to make sure that we're feeding what they need in their brand. And so as we're speaking to each brand individually, we want them to feel like they're the only brand we have. And although we have 15, we still want them to think that they are the most important person that we're talking to in the room. So some of those things we can do consistently across all brands, and some things we have to do that's basically brand specific. And so, for instance, Applebee's, they do have, their own training. They have their own very well-developed systems in place on employee engagement and things like that. And some of our other brands may not have that. And so what we do is look at what is working well with one brand that may already have it, and how can we consistently carry that through some of the other brands as well.
Yeah, so you're seeing it, and I think you put it really elegantly, of seeing what works and being able to share it amongst the brands, right? So you always get smarter when you listen to a lot of voices, right? Because you get a lot of different ideas and you can kind of take what's worked and what hasn't. And you have that at a massive scale where you can look at one brand and say, we tried X, it worked well, let's try it at Y. Or the opposite is, hey, this went horribly when we tried to roll this out at location 1 through 50. Let's not make that mistake again. Is there anything that stands out to you as, regardless of what brand you have to provide for the hourly workers, like a non-starter Sun's Holding staple of, and what you would recommend to other people of instituting?
Exactly. What we did when I first came here, I've only been here about a year and a half, is I noticed that one of the main things that other companies were offering that we were not was earned wage access. And
Mm,
so we knew that that was something I wanted to implement very quickly and across all brands. But we still try it out on one or two brands first and see how it rolls out, see how the employees are taking it. What can we do better as we roll it out across all brands? And so that's one of the big initiatives that everybody has really appreciated as one of the benefits that we can offer the employees.
yeah, and that's interesting. Why, from what are you hearing from the field of why earned wage access is so important?
Because so many of our employees are paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And so emergencies happen all the time. And so we want to make sure that are offering what they need to get through their day to day. And so everybody has families, everybody has responsibilities. And so I may not understand exactly what they're going through in their lives, but I want to be able to give them the tools and the resources they need to be able to furnish for themselves and for their family.
Yeah, I love that. So, is there any other really interesting programs or perks that you've seen be really successful over the last year or so?
Oh, quite a lot. So pay cards, of course, is one of them. Another thing that we offer is a health benefit for our part-time employees. So
Mm.
anybody is eligible to enroll into that. We also offer a perks program so that they have a website that they can go to that can look up different perks like local tire companies or something like that. And
Ah,
so we do try to do, different things there that they can access locally and not just something that's company wide.
yeah, what's interesting when I talk with you, and I don't mean this in a bad way whatsoever, but usually when we talk to bigger companies, they can't move very quickly just because of scale. But you strike me as somebody that you get things done, and that you guys have instituted a lot in a very short period of time, which I think is a massive compliment. But is that something you think about and try to buck the trend of becoming too big? And how do you manage kind of change and innovation in a company that's so big and grand?
That's also a great question. So we do have to be nimble. I mean,
Mm,
in the restaurant and retail space, it's constantly evolving, and so we have to be prepared and forward thinking, and so that we can change and pivot at a moment's notice. And so that's what we do, especially with looking at all of the different benefits, employee engagement, several different things and initiatives that we're going to be rolling out in 2025. And it's part of that. AI, of course, is really big. I'm sure you're hearing a lot of that.
yeah.
We already are using it in our recruiting platform. And so that's kind of things that I'm looking at down the road that, hey, can I go ahead and start looking on those things, first quarter, second quarter, and how we can roll those out.
Yeah, because it's interesting. You don't see, um, but this is an expression my dad used to say to me was whale. You don't see many, 40 or 50-foot whales in the ocean. And that's not because they can't get that big. It's just once they get that big, they get slow and they become prey after being predator for a really long time. And when I look at Sun Holdings, you're the second largest franchise group in the I think in the country, in the US, just say that for now. And there are not many in your tier, right? It's like you, other, but then it drops by like 1/10 the size of you. And then of course the vast, like all of the volume in franchising is in the 0 to 10 mark, the vast majority. So it's really interesting to hear just somebody that's as an outlier has built kind of in their DNA a constant strive for change and progress. And I actually read that in your founders' bios. That's something that they really appreciate is constantly striving for what's next, what's next, what's next. Do you find that in every part of your business, or do you think that's more just on the HR talent and recruitment side of things?
No, I actually see it across the whole entire business. So we are a franchisee, we are a
Yep.
franchisor, and we own our brands too, some of the brands as well. So we have to be cognizant of how does it affect us as a franchisee? What can we do as a franchisor? And then the brands that we own, how can we implement different programs and projects for them as well.
Yeah, I love that. And we are coming up on the 10-minute mark. I feel like, though, I could ask you a million questions and we could have this conversation again and again. So maybe we'll have to do a part 2, part 3, if you're up for it.
I would love
but I ask every single guest the same exact question. It's, what was your first ever hourly job? And were you fired from that job, or did you leave gracefully? And mind you, we've heard the funniest, silliest stories, but we've also heard the most heartbreaking and inspirational stories. So it's a complete spectrum, and feel free to just answer however you'd like.
Oh my goodness. Well, ironically, my very first job at 15 was working at an Arby's, which is one of our brands. Now, I didn't come through Arby's. It's just ironic that I did work at one of our brands when I started working. So that's and I wasn't fired because my stepmother was the manager. So I had to join Arby's to work there.
I love it. But again, Laura, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We look forward to learning from you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.